I'm McKinley Corbley, and you're listening to the Pro PTN Podcast, an interview talk show for piano technicians to tune in to what the pros are talking about from across the industry. If you enjoyed today's episode, show us some love by following us on your podcasting platform and leaving us a review. To learn more about us here at the Professional Piano Technicians Network, visit us at proptn.org. Hello and welcome to the show. I am your host, McKinley Corbley, and today I'm particularly excited to share the stage with a close friend of Pro PTN's. Joining us from across the pond, Martin Stokes is a UK-based piano technician who is the co-founder and developer of Pianosmith's Tools. If you haven't already ogled at the elegance and genius of their tool designs, then you're missing out, although you can find them for sale on the Pro PTN collection. Martin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So as I understand it, you're joining us from the end of a first of its kind multiple sclerosis treatment that has required you to spend several weeks in isolation. I can't even begin to imagine how long the journey must have been to get to this point, especially since it only recently got their green light in the UK back in 2021. But if you're comfortable sharing with us, I'd love to know how you're feeling about the treatment.
I'm feeling good now. We're on day 23 of being in an isolation room, and I've done the 11 rounds of chemo, which understandably aren't nice. I then did the 10 days of air quotes fighting infections, which that's what they call it, because you have literally zero immune system. So if someone sneezed at you, you would be really ill. And then as of 2 days ago, came up on my blood results that I have something called neutrophils, which are literally the building blocks of an immune system. So 2 days on, I now have a healthy immune system in the sense of the number of cells, but because they were completely wiped, they have no knowledge or recollection of anything which happened in the past, like vaccinations, common colds, chicken pox, everything. So now starts the next part of the journey of controlled but catching illnesses, as well as getting revaccinated for everything.
Golly. What is your go-to sort of self-care joy whenever you're sick? What's your sort of secret guilty pleasure?
One of my guilty pleasures of being here, the only thing I've really been allowed, so the coffee's undrinkable. Obviously, you can't get a gin and tonic, and all the food is cooked and prepared in a way that there is a guaranteed, or as much guaranteed, that there's no bacteria in it. So the hospital food here in this ward is a step down from the hospital food that the rest of the hospital gets, which is obviously a step down from basic food. And I have a fridge, and it has Diet Coke and crisps.
Amazing. That is a great go-to.
So if I can eat crisps, I will eat crisps. And if I can drink Diet Coke, turns out when you have a lot of chemo, your taste buds change. So Diet Coke doesn't taste of Diet Coke anymore. It's still okay, but it doesn't taste of Diet Coke.
I didn't know that.
Neither did I. So on the first 2 days before the chemo started, I was sitting there sipping Diet Coke, and then about 3 days after that, I pluck up the courage to get to the fridge to get a can of Diet Coke, and I sip it. I'm just like, what's wrong?
No.
You've taken the one thing I have away.
Oh God! And it's not. I mean, is it still good?
Oh no, it's still good, and it's not permanent. They've promised me it's not permanent, and I'm dreading all the foods that I have loved for the whole of my life, that when I go home, I'm going to taste them and go, oh.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is a little bit. But to be honest, as the side effect goes, it's not the end of the world.
That was a COVID side effect for a very long
time. I had it. Yeah, I didn't have any taste or smell. And so did my wife at the same time. And it's possibly the best diet tip ever, because food is so uninteresting. So we were well enough to wander around the house, but couldn't taste or smell. And we would just go and picking things, and like she would munch a biscuit and just go, taste a crunch. And I'd bite it. I'm just like, oh. And then we tried something, and we tried everything. There's nothing. But to the point when it was really bad, we did actually order a curry in, because we weren't going to eat out. And I ordered a slightly hotter one, and I accidentally just ate the chilies in the curry. And obviously my taste buds didn't know, but my body did, because I just started sweating profusely. And my wife's just like, you all right? I'm just like, yeah. She's like, you don't look all right. And then we're looking at the bottles. She's like, oh, I thought they were peppers. But
Oh
yeah,
my
no,
God.
as I say, if you could do that for a month without any other symptoms, you would shift some weight because
Right.
yeah,
Right.
food is just boring.
Boiled and boring, I imagine.
Boiled and boring, oh, crunchy and boring, or yeah.
I will be ready to be drinking a gin and tonic in your honor in 6 months
Well,
once
that
you've gotten past the chicken
uh,
pox and the common cold.
yeah, and fresh air. This room, the air's not fresh; it's heavily filtered, and the windows don't open, and there's an airlock type thing going through the door, so no germs get in. Every nurse, every room they go into, they have to change their masks, change their aprons, change their gloves. It is so strict. So when I get out, the first thing to worry about is air.
Oh my
which
God.
so we're going to start with that, breathing air.
On on a related
Yeah.
note, piano technology is an industry that doesn't seem to offer much visibility to technicians who aren't able-bodied or neurotypical. Can you give us a brief synopsis of your career and tell us about how you got started in piano technology, how your MS has affected your work thus far, and what it's been like navigating the industry since then?
Yeah, so I started with the idea of this being a career when I was 15. I was leaving school with a mate of mine as a 15-year-old, and there was a grand piano on its side in the school car park. And we were just like, there's a grand piano on this side. So we went into the music department, we were studying music, and we said, so what's with the grand piano? And they go, oh, we're throwing it away. Just like, oh, okay. So then we were talking, and I said, I always wanted a grand piano. And so we said, oh, can we have it? And they went, yeah, if you can move it. It's been there it's been there for 3 days. I'm surprised over the weekend. And the dustbin men didn't take it, unsurprisingly. They did take
Classic.
they did take the legs and the pedals, but they didn't take the piano. So we found a man with a van after school, as one does, and we got my PE teacher to help us load it in the van. My mum came home, bless her, to find a grand piano on its side on her driveway. I didn't ask her because if you ask her, she's going to say no, isn't it? It's one of those things. So she's like, "What's that?" I'm just like, "It's a piano." She's like, what's it doing here? I'm just like, I'm going to rebuild it. She's like, are you now? Right. Get it off the driveway before the neighbors see it. And then we manhandled it inside. And then she says, it's got to be gone by Christmas. She never said which Christmas. So as a 15-year-old, me and my mate took this thing to pieces with no prior knowledge, not completely to pieces. There was a moment we tried to take the frame out with the strings attached on the bridge, and turns out the frame doesn't come out.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
learned that.
Right.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, in hindsight. But so we rebuilt it as much as we could. We refinished it. We had legs made for it. We designed pedals
Wow.
from scratch, how we thought piano pedals should work. And eventually, many years later, it was sold at a huge loss. but but in that time, I said to my mum and dad, I want to do this for a job. And they're like, right, go to college, get some real subjects first. And then college for us is not university, it's college. So it's up to the age of 18. Once you've got your A levels at the age of 18, you can go and study it if you want. And worst case scenario, it would be a good hobby to do.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out it was more than a hobby, and also there was a definite need for young people in the piano trade. So it never even had a glimmer of being a hobby. It was meant to be.
You
Um,
feel the calling.
I did, and yeah, as I say, we sold the piano at a huge loss. Poor buggers who bought it.
Out
It
of
works.
curiosity, okay, out of curiosity, I have two questions. One, I'd love to know what kind of piano it is. And now looking back in hindsight, I mean, how
How bad was
good
it?
or how
How
bad
good?
do you think it was?
How did it go? So first, it was a Challen Baby Grand, which a
Ooh.
Challen are an old English make. They're a well-known make around here. They used to make. Well, London used to be the piano hub of the world. There was more pianos being built in London than anywhere else, and Challen was one of the bigger makes. And their Baby Grands were never fantastic, but they were little. And answering how well it went, luckily, before we sold it, I had rebuilt my mum and dad another grand piano. So they had two grand pianos. I wasn't living there at this time, but they had two grand pianos. And then my parents said one of them needs to go. At that point, I said, well, it's the first one that needs to go. And I did at least do some very good servicing on it. So it did work as it should. So I don't have any guilt from it. The strings were all there. They were still down bearing. We didn't completely destroy it that way. And we got the action working. So I do wonder where it is. I know the serial number. And one day it might crop up and I'll be like, I don't want
You never
that.
forget your first piano.
No, well, this is it. You never forget it, but you don't necessarily need it in your house.
Mm-mm,
No, no,
mm-mm.
no. I really don't need. I don't want that in my house at all.
Gotcha. I heard you say in your other podcast that there is a piano in the hospital that the
Hmm.
nurses said could use some tuning. Did you find out what kind of piano it is?
It is a cheap Chinese black upright thing with the name, which could be any name. Doesn't matter. It really is that nondescript. But it's new. It's not an old English piano. It's not an old piano. It's newish. It's black and shiny. So it must tune up. It must.
A
Unless
leg up from the Challen, I imagine.
and a leg and some. So yes, so I have spoken to them, and the problem is because it's a huge hospital, I need to find the people who will allow me to do it. And I'm dead keen on that. After this 20 odd days, I would happily come back once a year and do it for free because as a small thank you because they've all been great.
That's really
Yeah,
sweet.
but it's all I've got to give.
Yeah, yeah. So you got hooked on piano work with the Challen, and you rebuilt two pianos as a teenager in your parents' house. So then, where did it take you from there?
Well, one of the second piano was actually restored. I used to live in a giant converted warehouse, which we had a workshop. So that was great. And we were surrounded by creative. It was 3,500 square feet. And each bedroom had 2 floors. We had a dining table for 15 and sofas, it was amazing. And we had a workshop, or we had a room which was a studio. There was artists there and things like that. And I said, oh, can I have that bit for building pianos? And they went, oh. So that wasn't at home. I'd moved out, well and truly moved out by then.
That sounds like a great first gig for a teenager to have your own warehouse space, because I feel like the biggest
Oh,
problem
yeah,
with workshops is the space.
yeah. No, one thing we had was space, and yeah, there was a lot of it. The 9 of us lived there, but it was
9.
gigantic. 9, but it was gigantic, and everybody had their own lounge downstairs in their bedroom as well as a bedroom. But then there was a giant lounge, communal lounge as well. It
Okay.
was a good time in my life. It was a fun time, and also the rent was incredibly cheap. Which if living in London, you don't get that.
So then, with the warehouse space, where did your career develop from there? Did you end up finding a mentor or schooling, or did you just learn from trying things out?
In the UK, we have a 3-year course for your basics. In the third year of that course, I started working in a piano shop in London and commuting to London and back just to do a couple of days there. Following that, I lost my job there. And ended up getting a job at Harrods selling pianos, which that was interesting. At least it was a good eye opener to the sort of people who have money and deal. It was a real good eye opener. Left that job and was then sort of found by a piano shop in London who was looking for young piano tuners who they could train further and potentially train them to be concert technicians. So myself and 2 other lads, we were 25 at the time. We were taught by their concert technician, and then we were sent to Japan. We were sent to Italy, and subsequently I went to Germany and spent time with those companies, learning how they do it, and as well as then continuing the training in London. So that was 8 years, and that really that stopped me restoring pianos. That was. And I'm just like I am now a technician. I service. I love servicing, and that's the route then my career went into. And also financially, restoring is hard work,
Yeah,
and you need a lot of kit. Fundamentally, being a technician isn't that expensive in the grander scheme of things, but it's just you need the knowledge, which
yeah,
is the sort of harder bit to get.
yeah. And especially if you were 25, I don't know where the internet was in terms of its development or what kind of resources were readily available for
Well,
people around that time?
a fine example. When I was 25, I had to use an A to Z map because smartphones didn't have Google Maps.
That strikes me
Imagine,
as completely
um,
absurd. I cannot
yeah,
imagine.
yeah. It's like a carrier pigeon, isn't it? So trying to send a note with that, and it was quite difficult. And I would generally lose my A to Z, but then I would find it. So I remember when we left London, I had something like 9 A to Zs, little ones, all the same ones. And I'm just like, do we need nine? But do we need any? Because we have Google Maps now. So we kept one just for sentimental reasons. And I'm sure it's holding up something in the house now, so it's serving its purpose. It's been a door wedge. But yeah, it's yeah. The phones have changed the industry a lot with obviously information and tuning apps, which have become leaps and bounds since I started. But when I started, I was taught completely by ear because fundamentally that's pretty much the only way you could do it. There were some machines out there, but they weren't really very good. And we were taught by ear. And then eventually someone was showing me and convinced me to download. Well, it wasn't download, it was to get CyberTuner, which was on a PDA because it was before. Do you remember? Do you know what a PDA is? They're like little
uh,
computers. They're like little computers which don't do much. Um, and the screens were rubbish, but smartphones didn't exist. And you downloaded it. And to be honest, it was perfectly good at doing tuning because it doesn't need much visual display, does it? But the second smartphones came about and I got an iPhone, it was literally just transfer it over. It's just like I never look back. The PDA was destroyed quite happily and proudly. So
so after training as a concert technician and getting all that really valuable factory training, which is incredible that you were able to get that training from so many different sources. I,
yeah, the piano shop was well connected. So it was Quai in Japan, Fazioli in Italy, and then afterwards, I was offered Grotune, but that didn't work out well. But then I ended up going to Blutner as well, and they all do everything so differently. It's quite incredible, quite incredible.
that is very good to hear. I only got a few hours of factory training at Fazioli last year, and
Oh
that
wow!
alone was
Isn't it beautiful?
it's so beautiful. Oh my
It's
gosh.
so
And the
beautiful.
people were so, in my experience, most, if not all, European piano technicians have been very sweet and gracious and much less gatekeeping, I think, culturally, it felt. Um,
Yeah, no, yeah. No, I'll let you have that.
oh, no,
Look,
elaborate.
I think like in the UK, when you get into the upper echelon, because everybody does things differently, and certain pianists prefer things a certain way, which a technician can deliver. There is a bit of clashing of horns with, oh well, I do it this, they don't actually talk about it. Piano technicians don't get to meet. They disagree quite profoundly on certain issues, and I'm just like, look, you deal with the Royal Opera House, you deal with South Bank Centre. You're both pretty good at your jobs, guys.
I'm
um,
I'm glad that you are mentioning this because I had written down a question that I had wanted to ask you about how international piano technicians don't always get to share their experiences with each other and learn about the ways that we're different but similar. So, in your experience with American technicians or international technicians in general, can you tell us what the British tech community is like and how it might differ from America's?
we are, like a lot of things, a lot more stuck in our ways. And it was quite enlightening and a positive experience when we came to America to see you guys in the PTG, that you are a lot more open to learning and teaching and all of this compared to us. The British piano trade is in big trouble. I know the American piano trade isn't as healthy as it should be, but we're in such big trouble that the old boys are happy with what they're doing. They don't want to teach anyone. They just want to continue and then retire or die. And there aren't many young people coming through, of which I don't think people quite understand. If to be a really good technician, it takes a lot of learning,
Yeah.
a lot of learning. And we don't even have that as at the moment as a place where you could train for that. We have schools where I studied. It was piano, tuning, of course, and restoration. The technical servicing side of it, we did touch on it, but we only just touched on it. And it's just like, well, that is actually probably more important than restoring for most people. And there isn't a place, as far as I know, in this country who teaches technical knowledge at all.
I believe there's the piano technology school, I thought in England, unless I'm making that up.
Yes, they're teaching tuning, and once again, just well, that's a 6 month course.
Right, right,
So it is they're very good at hammering the basics down and getting people comfortable with the lever. But in 6 months, you cannot learn any more than that. I'm sure they would like to do more, but there doesn't seem the want from the piano trade for them to do it, which makes it harder. Makes it
right.
so hard. Interestingly, Italy, Fazioli. Did you know that Fazioli probably only sell one Fazioli, maybe two to Italians a year, and that's it because Italians
They
don't like
don't make.
piano. They don't.
Yeah.
And they're just like that's not their market. I'm just like that's incredible.
I was at the only jazz bar in Venice because I was on my way back from Fazioli, and the bar had the most depressing sounding U1 I've ever had the misfortune of hearing, and it sounded like it hadn't been tuned in a million years. And the pianist was incredible who played that night, and so I had to pull him aside and say, What's it like in this area? What's
Yeah, yeah.
are
Don't
are
they?
you guys okay?"
Did somehow you miss a cultural thing that you think the Italians would have down by now? They have lots of things which are historic. They do have concerts, they do have concert technicians, but it's not big on pianos. The Germans are the way forward for that. They have a lot better schools and stuff in place.
I
But
will say we also did just get two Faziolis into our dealership where I work up in Maryland, and the two are extremely different but extremely beautiful. And playing them makes me inherently play piano a lot more like Herbie Hancock. I don't know if that's just a mental thing because I know he's
he's one of the
incredible.
fancy early guys. It's
Yeah.
which models do you have now? Asked.
We have the
What?
212 and I believe the 2
It's the bigger one.
228. Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they are the two. Yeah, you've got the two good ones. Yeah, that
Yeah.
the smaller ones are good, but yeah, the 212 and the 228 are just they're amazing. They are so different though. If you go and select them from the Fazioli factory, there'll be 8 pianos, and oh my god, they'll just be different worlds.
Yeah.
So it is very much a personal thing. You'll also find they're really high maintenance. They are so Italian. They look beautiful. They're covered in gold. But if you don't service them every 6 months, they'll sound quite mediocre. And yeah, they just want and want and want. People say, oh, they're the Ferrari of the piano trade, or, Steinways are the Rolls Royce of the piano trade. Okay. Fazioli are not the Ferrari. They're more like a Formula One car. In my eyes only. They will go
Apt.
faster and do
Apt.
something amazing, but they will spend a hell of a lot of time in the garage, and they need that to go that fast, and that's why the concert fleet we had I was part of in London in the shop there. We had 3 concert grounds, and they were serviced every 6 weeks without fail, even if they weren't being used, and the guy servicing them was incredible as well.
So now you mostly do concert work as a self-employed technician.
No, and we'll get on to it, because of the health thing. I don't
Right.
do much concert work anymore
I see.
because I do concerts, but not much, and I look after Bluteness Concert Grand, but I'm just not made for it anymore, sadly.
So
But
then,
yeah.
apart from the concert tunings, how has your MS diagnosis affected your work? Because I believe you said you were diagnosed 10 years ago.
More so. I was diagnosed 7 years ago, but the symptoms were showing themselves 15 years prior to that.
Right.
So it's been 20, it was 22 years. And it all changed, though things weren't right. It all changed in 2017 when I completely lost the ability to walk. I was out actually walking to a job, and I lost the control of my legs for no good reason. My upper body was able in every way, shape, or form. My brain was there, but I could not control my legs, which was an interesting one. And long story short, I got an Uber, went outside my wife's work. Well, in a pub outside my wife's work, trying to work out what the hell was going on. I was telling her, "Oh, I'll wait for you to finish work." When she finished work, she came out and said, "Are you all right?" I'm just like, "I can't control my legs at all." The waiter very kind, the barman was very kind of was bringing me drinks. And she's like, "What?" I'm just like, "Yeah." And I showed her. She said, "We need to take you to the hospital." I'm just like, "I've been sad for 3.5 hours drinking beer now." They're just going to say, they're just going to say I'm drunk. And she's like, "Right." Because we were both working in London, but we didn't live in London at that point. She said, "Well, what are we going to do?" I said, "Well, let's go home. Let's sleep on it. If I can't walk in the morning, we'll go to A&E." And sure enough, I couldn't walk in the morning, and I went to A&E. That was a fun 40 hours. And a consultant who I've never met before went to a completely different hospital, worked it out in 6.5 hours, and they've been trying to work it out for 15 years. And he did in 6.5. And he wasn't even a neurologist, but he was an older consultant. And he looked at me and he was like, "Oh, go for this test. Oh, go for that test." And he even came back to give me the news. And he went, "We know what's wrong with you." I'm just like, "Oh, great. That's great." And he says, "Well, I'm not a neurologist, but we'll send you to neurology tomorrow and they'll start treatment." Like, right, okay. But my legs at that point were spasming and doing all crazy things. And my wife and I just like, "So what's wrong?" And he says, "Well, we found evidence of plaques on your brain and spine," which at that point in my life, I didn't know. Oh, well, plaques. When someone says plaque, you think teeth. I'm just like, I'm just like, "Oh, no, plaques." He says, "Oh, we found lesions on your brain and spine." I'm just like, "What caused that?" And he says, "Oh, you've got MS. Did you not know?" I was just like, "Wow, that was a bombshell." And they said, "Well, as I say, I'm not a neurologist, but if you have any questions, just talk to the nurses and talk to the team tomorrow." They walked away, and I looked at my wife, and I'm just like, "Got a mess." She's just like, "Yeah," because we did the terrible thing a couple of years prior and put all the symptoms into Google, and Google pulled out MS, and we were just like, "Surely they would have got that."
We're conditioned to believe that the Google diagnoses are always the
Yeah,
crazy illnesses that
no,
never in a million
no,
years would be
they got it
diagnosed.
on the money. And then for a year prior to my diagnosis, my consultants had given up, and they were telling me it was psychosomatic, which is the worst thing a doctor can ever do, because they even explain, "Look, it's not you, it's not your fault, it's your brain doing these things, but you have no control over it." And for a year, they drummed that into me, and I was laying there on the bed, wife next to me, and I said, "I wasn't making it up." And she goes, "I didn't think you were making up." And I'm just like, I had honestly started to think I was making it up, because if enough people of a certain level of doctors tell you something, you start to believe them. But God, they were wrong. And yeah, so that was a bit of a bombshell. Subsequently, I lost the ability to walk another 4 times, and learning to walk is really difficult, really, really difficult. One time, I had a 2-year-old, and she was learning to walk, and I was learning to walk at the same time, and she made it look so easy. It's a funny disease. It's not funny, haha, but it's a peculiar one. It's just, it presents in so many different ways as well, which makes it difficult sometimes to diagnose. And there are so many symptoms you have, to the point one doctor even said, "Oh, that's a lot of symptoms." I'm just like, well, in the politest way, F you.
And
Yeah.
especially, it feels like whenever they say something is psychosomatic, it is very much them phoning it in and giving up and saying, "Well, it
It is.
seems it must be your problem."
Yeah, yeah, it's literally the get out of jail free card. And
Yeah.
it's terrible. And to be told they're psychosomatic by a gastrologist makes it even worse, because they're not even qualified to tell you that it's psychosomatic. So yeah, there were lots of things through my treatment and my diagnosis, which some would say head should roll, but doesn't matter. It's the past now.
Right.
Um,
Based on listening to you talk about it, do you have any words of advice that you would give to differently abled piano technicians who may still be learning the ropes of the industry?
Yeah, there's tons of things. I think these days, piano technology, piano technicians, piano tuners, there are so many different facets of the industry, which you don't have to be a piano tuner who does a bit of servicing. You don't have to be just a restorer. You can mix it up. So Me, for example, trained to be a concert technician, I get fatigue and lots of other things. So I literally couldn't stay awake at night to do a concert. That was the main problem, which would be a major problem. And I can't walk around much. So I worked out if I get in with some good academies, I could be their in-house piano technician on a site. You don't have to go long distances between them. It's in the day and normal hours. So yeah, I would say if anyone's just starting and they do have a disability or something, just think about what you have in a sensible way and work out which parts of the trade are possible, because they are there. They are so there. You shouldn't always just shoot for the stars. You've got to be sensible about that and being concentrated, but then working out. Yeah, it's not just a school. Yeah, so one of the places I work is the Hudimenian School, which they're genius young musicians. They turn up at the age of 8 and they're grade 8 in piano, and that's their second instrument. It's that sort of stuff, and we've got some lovely pianos there as well, like the conservatoires, and also it's nice to have the social side of it. That's the part I realise I really enjoy, because it's all well and good going to a customer's house and going, morning, cup of coffee, yes, please, piano's there, thank you. And that's literally it, apart from at the end when you say, oh, I would recommend you doing this next time, and could I have some money, please? Uh, and repeat and repeat and
Right.
repeat and repeat. And I think I personally could never have done that. I think I would have gone crazy. I just did that day in, day out. Saying that other tuners do, and they're very happy to do it. So you just got to find which bit interests you, but then also goes well with whatever disability or whatever. It doesn't even have to be a disability. If you hate people, for example, become a restorer. Become a restorer. Just lock yourself in a workshop with a piano, and you don't have to touch people at all. And that's great. But there's an ilk for everyone within the piano trade, I feel.
That is excellent advice. I think across the board, really. But in addition to your technical work as well, you are the co-founder of Piano Smith's Tools, whom I
Mm.
personally am a huge fan of. ProPTN is a huge fan of your work. And so, what are some things that you've learned from diving into the world of making and selling tools?
We've learned lots of things the hard way. It's not as easy as you would think, no matter how hard you think it is, but it's not that easy. The whole idea initially was to make more accurate tools which were lighter, and though I'm all for things being made in America and all things made in Italy or whatever, made in Britain where things haven't traveled a million miles to get the components. We try and source as much as possible. So that was the starting point. The hardest bit to start off was getting the name out there, or just people knowing about our existence. And social media has been great. I started on Instagram just telling the journey. We weren't even selling anything at that point. And people just like, when are you going to, how do we get hold of this? And we did sell a bit through bank transfers and things like that. And it was an absolute nightmare. And people don't like that. People like to just click buy now, which is fair enough. I like to click buy now. So one of the biggest challenges we found once we actually got going was making volume, because everything we're making is small batch. Adrian, the other co-founder, has a workshop, and he's a genius machinist. So his CNC machine he built from scratch just because he wanted to. And he's got numerous different types of CNC machines. He's just amazing. But everything is obviously done small scale. For example, our sharp gauges, we make 14 in the go. And it does take a long time, because you get the ply, you have to then glue the Formica on, but glue it on well, which is an art itself. Then get it in the CNC machine, cut it, and it needs to be lasered. It's incredibly labor intensive. And then the challenge is trying to find a price which people are happy to pay, but we actually at least cover our costs, which we cover our costs, and we're not going to be buying another acre of land anytime soon. But that wasn't the reason for it initially. We wanted to make better tools, which were more accurate and lighter, and doing our bit for the planet. Simple as that.
So, can you tell me a little bit about how you've been trying to use more eco-friendly methods to make the tools, in addition to
And
sourcing everything locally?
packaging. I'm amazed that companies don't use recyclable packaging. Packaging now can be recyclable and biodegradable. And it's almost making it hard to buy something which isn't. And then it's not that expensive. Now it's so commonly available. It really isn't that expensive. So everything is recyclable in the packaging world, apart from the odd bit of tape which we Even some of the tapes we have got that is water based, but it really just doesn't stick as well. and if you're shipping something to America, you got to make sure it sticks. So sometimes we do have to use sellotape. But things like the ink we use to stamp all our packaging, the ink is water based, because if it's biodegradable packaging and it's a non-water based ink, that's bad. So you make it water based, and it's amazing. All this stuff is out there. Granted, you have to do research and pay a little bit more for it, but it's 100% worth it, and it's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. And it was wrapped so beautifully. I ordered the black key height gauge from you guys, as well as the hammer files. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting on my budget to get the concert capstan tool because
Wow, you're going to go concert, are you? Okay.
but it's
Yeah.
just looks so nice.
And
It feels so
if it looks
nice.
and feels so nice, that's all that matters. That's
Yeah.
all that matters. And it also works.
Yes, yes.
Yes, that is so difficult to make. He had to fabricate components for an old lathe to make it possible to make them, and then weld them onto the lathe or bolt them on. It's just like, yeah, they take a long time. And then after he's ground them, you've got to bend them. Bending silver steel is difficult at the best of times. So you've got to bend them. So you've got to taper with a bend, and then you've got to heat treat them. Then you've got to laser them. Then you've got to buff them. And then, oh my God, they take forever. Adrian doesn't, he loves making them, but at the same time, when I say, oh, can we have another 50 capstan turners? And he looks at me and goes, no. I'm just like, yeah, once again, Adrian, this is a business. I've got an order for 20 of them, and I want another. Yeah, I'm busy. I'm just like, I know you're busy. I know you're busy, and I'm busy, but you're not busy now. You're not busy to make the other things. It's just you're busy to make these. It's like, yeah, I don't want to make them. I'm just like, okay, cool. But the problem is we've made them now. We've made them really beautiful, and we've proven we can. So we have to continue.
Oh, Lordy. Well, it's worth every penny, truly. You're
Yeah,
making
yeah, no,
everybody's lives a lot easier.
and tool bags a little bit prettier as well.
Are there any ways that you hope to see tool manufacturing change in the future?
There are certain things we could scale up and outsource to a company we know in England, which do that sort of thing, but on bigger scale. Some things can be done there. So we were thinking about that, because the problem is we've got so many tools we want to make. And if Adrian's in the workshop making them, every time we add a new tool to the list, he's got another thing he needs to keep in stock. And he's a piano restorer and tuner, and he has a family. Which I think that's a difficult part, isn't it? If he didn't have a family, he'll be fine. He could work every hour under the sun. But he's a restorer, which he loves doing. He's a tuner, which obviously we all tune. But then he's also a co-founder of this company. So he's a busy man, and he's not going to give up his restoring for it. We're in discussion, but it's a little bit more complicated, like most things.
Well, I don't think that anybody, as much as we love your tools, I don't think anybody would want Adrian to lose a source of income from the restoring. So I
No,
wish you guys luck on that front.
we can pay him. We can pay him. But at the moment, we're not paying ourselves at all. We're
Yeah.
literally, but the company is now completely paying for itself, which was the big hurdle. So it's very happy. It has its own account. It has money to spend on materials. And at some point, yes, it would be nice to pay ourselves. But at the moment, we're happy doing our work. And both of us, strange thing to say, don't need the money. We're not stinking rich, but if we're in trouble, granted, there's money in the bank, which we pay ourselves from it. But it's still an enjoyable process, and we're still loving what we're doing. Makes me happy.
Yeah. And I feel like the more that I talk to, especially younger technicians who are coming onto the scene with fresh eyes and saying where the industry is lacking. And so I think there's a lot more grassroots type little businesses that are springing up amongst independent technicians. And that seems to be the common theme, is that nobody is really able to make money from it early on.
No,
But
and in the early years you can't. No, it does take
yeah.
a while. Really does. If you think about it, I did my 3 years, then I did 8 years of training. That's 11 years. You could be an architect or a doctor in that time. That's a little bit more secure as an income than a piano tuner technician. But I wouldn't make a very good doctor or a very good architect. So I don't know that. I've spent so much time in hospital now. I'm probably quite. I got the gist of it.
I imagine there are also quite a few things in hospital that you see could be done better.
Oh my God. There was without going into huge amounts of detail, for the treatment, you have to have a catheter fitted. That's the way it has to be, because they pump you full of so much liquid, blah, 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 to flush out the chemo drug. Everyone emptying the catheter made it look difficult. It wasn't fun. It was on the floor. And one lady came along, one of the nurses did it. And I was looking at her, I'm just like, that's clever. She's like, what's clever? I'm just like, the way you just did that, that really worked. So then for the past 2.5 weeks, I've been educating every other nurse. I'm just like, okay, look, one of your nurses did this, and I think it's the best idea ever. And then they do it, and then they do it, and they go, that's amazing. Who was it? I'm like, I don't remember who it was. Doesn't matter. We're passing on the information. So I will leave proudly knowing that this ward empties catheters with more ease now.
Oh my gosh, that's
That's my
incredible.
gift. That's my gift. Yeah.
God bless you, Martin. Have you had a similar sort of aha moment or special eureka moment from your career in piano technology that you feel is similar in that not a lot of people might know about it, but it was a profound epiphany?
Yeah, and that's why we started Pianosmiths. Because
Ah.
yeah, because there were all these ideas. The first idea was these gauges, which gauges are readily available, brand gauges on the market. But I'm just like, they should be better than that. And talking to Adrian, and he's just like, yeah, we can make that. I'm just like, can we? And I use them all the time. And the people who have bought them are just like, yeah, these work really well. And then when I explain the thought behind them, because there's so much further thought behind them, it's crazy. Which I don't feel that the other manufacturers of gauges have thought about. Um, yeah, I'm just like, I still think ours are the best on the market. I was going to say plastic gauges, but they're not plastic. It's PLA, and PLA is a filament which is biodegradable, but not biodegradable. It's recyclable air quotes, biodegradable air quotes. Either way, it costs a lot less energy to make in the first place, and it becomes brittle after 80 years, unlike plastics, which last forever. So, no brainer, isn't it? You've got 80 years to use them, and then you're going to have to fork out for anyone. I'm just like, we're okay with that. That's an okay lifespan, and to be honest, they only become brittle if you leave them outside, and if you're leaving your gauges outside, then it's your own bloody fault.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then, are you able to tell us about any tool ideas that you've had for tools of the future that pianosmiths will be making?
We have a whiteboard which is long, and it keeps on getting added to, because we have technicians who send us photos of ideas which don't work and said, how does this work? I'm just like, that's fantastic. Put it at the bottom of the whiteboard. We'll get to it in 2027. But one thing, so we're doing all our technicians' tools, but Adrian, being the restorer, designer, made his own tools for doing jobs for restoring pianos. And they're really niche. Some of them I don't quite get. But he designed and made something for cutting out shim holes in soundboards that where you're going to put the shims. He has two of other companies that which are very good, but there's problems with them. So what did he do? He redesigned his own one, which is better, and
Incredible.
arguably he's correct. So they will be on sale eventually one day. The problem is the soundboard shimmer, I think, is about 7 foot long, so a bit of a nuisance to post, but you only ever buy one. And yeah, it's like really niche. But as we say, he's designed it, he's made it, it works for him. He'll make one to sell, and it can just collect dust if someone gets the urge to buy it.
Hmm.
And it's just giving the trade that tool which they never thought they needed or existed. And it's lots of weird tools he's made, which I still look at them and I still don't understand, Adrian. I understand what a piano is, but I don't understand how that works. And then he tries to explain, and yeah, the challenge will be trying to put an instruction manual together on how to use them.
Yeah, that's one thing
Yeah,
that ProPTN has been trying to do, which I love, is adding how-to videos to go along with
I
the
know
tools.
they're
It's
great.
it makes me so happy. I think I have something that I bought on impulse from a used collection that was a jack alignment
Oh
gauge.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the instructions were printed on an inch by inch piece of paper with two instructions written, and I just kept saying, I don't get it.
I
I don't
don't
understand it.
understand. Luckily, though she's my wife, who has been a huge influence with the way things look and the branding and everything. She's a graphic designer, a very good one. So she could make an instruction manual very happily. The problem is, out of anyone, she's the one who gets paid because Adrian and I, we'd get on with it, but I can't bring her in and say, look, we're not going to pay you. We're not going to pay you at all. And we want you to do the best work you can and now. But so she's the one who actually gets a little bit of money, but it's still not rocking the bank. But I'm sure she would love to make an instruction manual, and she'd probably love the challenge of trying to make it an inch by an inch. Maybe a little book, a perfectly bound little book
I
with some
wasn't
amazing.
necessarily endorsing the inch by inch
No,
instruction
no,
manual.
no, no, no. I think
It can be
you set the
bigger.
seat.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we've covered so much excellent ground thus far. I'm kind of reluctant to be bringing it to a close, but I would love to close this out by asking my favorite question, which is particularly relevant to you as well. But can you tell us about your favorite part of piano technology and your favorite tool?
Nice and easy. I love servicing grand pianos. In the UK, we call, well, the elders call it the dark arts. If you really understand how a grand piano action works, you can do some really crazy stuff. You can trick people, and they say make it lighter, and you can make it feel lighter, yet you haven't changed the weights of the keys. And it's just like, it's fun. I find that. And it's just a puzzle. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's just a puzzle where maybe there's 20 adjustments, and every adjustment knocks out 19 of the adjustments. It's great fun. So grand piano servicing, 100%. The bigger the piano, the better. And that's that for sure. Favorite tool, nice and easy, Capstan turner.
Mm,
I love a good Capstan turner. Second place would be a very good tuning lever, which we are in prototyping with an American lever maker, Randy Sato, and he's made me three so far, and we've nearly honed in the shapes we want, of which we're going to send him British spalted beech. So they've got beautiful handles. He's going to send them back over. We're going to actually finish them differently to his as well, and then they're going to be beautiful.
that's going to be
And
exciting.
and his levers are lovely. They sort of changed my life slightly.
I just tried an impact lever for the first time in uprights. But of course, it's way easier on the body. I really don't want to keep having more back problems. But the learning curve vexes me greatly.
Well, that's the fun of it, though, isn't it?
Getting the tunings down to 45 minutes feels really good. And so bumping that number back up again just bums me out.
What's your record of how many pianos tuned in a day?
Oh, I think I've done 6 now.
Okay,
I think. What about you?
my record is 13.
Shut up.
Six. Well, when we do the schools, because we look after schools, we have to tune them all, every piano before term starts, so 3 times a year. And the boys I get in to help me, and the new kids, it's actually a great learning curve. I'm just like, right, today you're going to do 5. You're going to get used to that. Tomorrow, 6. 6 is the number. But then if you can do 6, you might do 7. 7, I think, is the comfortable number for me. 8 is then difficult. But then once you've done 8, your brain switches off and you just keep on going. And it turns out you come back the next day and you're like, oh, this is all right. This is perfectly fine. Your brain literally just wants to die and curls up and goes to the back of your skull. But your
Yeah.
hands just carry on tuning. And obviously, this is with an electronic tuner, so your ears don't have to do it. To the point, I actually wear noise cancelling headphones if I'm doing, yeah.
I wanted to
Uh,
ask. I was curious about your earplug headphone situation.
Well, these ones are just normal headphones, but I have proper noise cancelling one where you can change how much they cancel it, the outside
Oh.
world. So, and it takes all the harsh frequencies off. So you can still bash in unisons like anything, but your ears don't get damaged.
I just started wearing the loop earplugs and they've been a game
Oh,
changer. I'm so
oh
much
yeah,
less
hugely.
crankier also when I get home.
Yeah, no, after 12 or 13, I come home and my wife's just like, you're right. I'm just like, mm.
No.
And this is, no. So, do you want to talk? No, no. I've been sitting for the past 9 hours tuning pianos and with headphones on, and I've lost the will to live. But
You
it's
have.
okay. I'm just like, the problem is tomorrow I've got to do another 8. That's the problem. But yes, she's got used to it. I've got used to it. I don't try and do too many now because it's unhealthy.
Yeah, that's
But
insane. I think 4 is where I'm I've worked my way up to 4, and 4 feels comfortable. That's in the average. That's usually with field work. I think if I'm in the shop, I could probably do more. But yeah, I enter that zombie phase of I start hearing the sound of the piano in my ears when I'm not even tuning, and it just feels worrisome. And
That's where madness comes. So yeah, that's why
yeah.
that's why piano tuners who've just tuned pianos for 40 years are a little bit crazy. Yeah, fair enough to it. You would be too, and
Yeah.
maybe you will be. It's just time. It's
I
just
think
time.
I think you have to be a little mad to do it to begin with because
To
it
be honest,
feels
if
a
you,
little
yeah.
bonkers. But I think that does have a certain romance. I started talking to a guy who was really into organ rebuilding, and I felt that
Oh,
same crazed sort of manic curiosity where I was like, well, I have to learn more about that. It's an even more archaic industry than pianos. I gotta, and it's
seriously.
that's a different podcast for the future, I
Yeah,
think, where I gotta do more
organs.
homework.
Yeah, organs. I don't understand organs. I've been at St Paul's Cathedral, annoyingly, when they've been tuning the organ and they've got the piano tuner in there and the organ tuner at the same time. I'm just like, well, this isn't going to work because they always win. And I was talking to him about St Paul's thing, and it's just an absolute mess
Yeah.
because it's been extended and extended and extended. I'm just like, you can extend them. Oh yeah, you can just. And so what's that? Generally, you weld a pipe to it.
Hmm.
A longer, bigger pipe. I'm just like, oh, that's quite crude. But it's more than that. Yeah, I've only ever met two organ tuners. They're mystical creatures.
I cornered the apprentice because he was a childhood friend of mine, and the fact that he ended up in a similar industry was really wild. So I had run into him in a parking lot, and I basically cornered him and pulled out my voice recorder and said, I need you to tell me several ways that organ rebuilding is different from pianos." And he said, well, the key differences are that it costs millions of dollars to work on organs.
Yeah, yes,
Uh,
they're not cheap.
they basically build the buildings around organs,
Yes,
and it takes about a month to tune an organ. You can't do it in a week. And I said, well,
yeah,
those are three very big differences.
yeah. No, I don't think our trade would exist like that.
No.
We can cope with that. But yeah, I do love that you cornered him in a car park. Well done, you.
Thank you very
Um,
much. And thank you so much for joining us on the show. This has been so much fun.
it's been my pleasure, and as I say, I'm in an isolation room with nothing to do. So you've been a beautiful distraction. Thank you ever so much.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And we really look forward to keeping track of your recovery and being able to cheer you on and wait for you
Well,
at the
this is
finish line.
yeah. I can't wait for that gin and tonic next year when I'm allowed.
Oh yeah,
And
you let me know, and we'll be
well,
cheersing from opposite ends of the ocean.
exactly. You'll have one at midday, and I'll have one at 6 o'clock in the evening. That'll work, won't it?
Nothing
And
out of the ordinary.
on a Tuesday, yeah, yeah, of course, on the Tuesday.
Tuesday at 1 p.m.
Sounds good to me.
All
Sounds great.
right.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you ever so much.
And thank you for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Though Martin is no longer in quarantine, we're still cheering him on his long road to recovery. You can also show him and his family and Adrian your love and support by visiting their website at pianosmiths.co.uk or by following them on Facebook or Instagram. You can also buy their tools at our very own proptn.org. See you next time.